Windows Live OneCare. In the last few videos in this Vista series, we've talked about the Windows Firewall and Windows Defender as part of the overall security features of Windows Vista. But Microsoft does have another service up their sleeve which not only includes new and improved versions of these features, but throws in antivirus software and a new version of the Windows backup software as well. Now I know that you might be thinking, hang on, Microsoft, who has arguably the biggest security updates of any major software vendor, why would I trust my security to them? Well, that's true. Microsoft is the most targeted operating system in the world for viruses, spyware, and crackers, but it's also the most popular software by far, and that also makes for a larger number of people targeting their products. But that said, this OneCare product by Microsoft is not only really good, it's also really cheaply priced at $50 US a year, and that $50 covers up to 3 computers. And if you compare that with most other antivirus software providers, you'll see that Microsoft's offering is much cheaper and throws in the firewall, anti-spyware, and backup programs as well. So at least as far as cost goes, it can't be beaten. And also, OneCare is ISCA Lab certified. And if you haven't heard of ISCA before, it's kind of the industry standard certification for security products, and it's not a Microsoft thing. So it's comforting to know that OneCare has passed this certification, which should reassure you that the product meets the strict risk reduction standards that this certification requires. Now I will point out though that before we move on, Windows Live OneCare is only designed for client operating systems at this stage, and it's only available if you're running a 32-bit operating system. So if you have a server you want to protect or a 64-bit version of Vista, at least for now, OneCare is not for you. But if I was a betting man, I'd imagine that Microsoft will soon offer this service for 64-bit Vista in the near future. Okay, so go and grab yourself a copy of OneCare, and you'll need to head off to Microsoft's website, simply type in OneCare, and you'll end up here at this site where you can download a 90-day trial of the software. Now to save time, I've already downloaded OneCare here to my desktop, so we'll double click on this file to start it up, and we'll click continue on our user account control message. Now the first thing setup will do is check for any new updates that there may be. Alright, with that out the way, we're ready to install OneCare, so we'll choose our language and then click next, and we'll need to accept the license agreement terms, and we'll click next again, and then Windows Live OneCare will begin installing. Now during this installation, OneCare will download any updates that it needs, so be sure that you do have a working internet connection. Now this will take a little while, and when the installation is complete, setup will require you to restart your computer. So I'm going to pause this video here, and we'll return once the installation is complete and I've rebooted Windows Vista. Okay, Windows Live OneCare is now installed, and I've just restarted our computer, and since this is a trial version at the moment, it starts up with this splash screen like you see here, giving us the chance to activate the product if we've paid for it, or simply continue the trial. So let's choose the bottom option for now, and let's see if this software is worth paying for. Alright, now from the main OneCare screen here, instantly at the top, the most recognizable thing is this green status icon here, telling me that my current system is good, indicating that there are no major problems, and my PC is in fact protected. Now down the bottom here in this system tray, you'll also notice the OneCare icon, which is currently green, indicating that all is well, and this icon will also change color to yellow or red as the status of our system changes. So if you fire up your PC and you see a red icon, for example, you'll know that something is wrong and you should go and take a look. Now we can go and activate the product if we like, but as you can see over here, we do have 90 days or 3 months to try this software out, which is a rather generous time to be able to evaluate it. Okay, well under our Protection Plus heading here, we can see that virus and spyware monitoring is turned on, the firewall is set to auto and that's turned on, and we can see the phishing filter in Internet Explorer version 7 is also on. Now we can choose to scan our system for viruses and spyware, which is a good idea, And if we click this option, we can perform a quick scan, which scans the areas of Windows most likely to be affected by viruses and spyware, things like the startup programs, the registry, and the Windows folders. We can perform a full scan of our entire system, as well as a custom scan, where we can then choose which files, folders, and drives that we'd like to include in our scan. Now we can also check for updates as well, which it will do automatically, of course, but we can start the check manually if we prefer. Now under the Performance Plus heading, we can see that since this is a new installation, our computer hasn't yet had a performance tune-up. So if we click on Start Tune-Up, OneCare will start removing any unnecessary files, defragging our hard disk, as well as run a virus and spyware scan. It's also going to tell us what files we need to back up, and finally it's going to check for any new security updates from Microsoft. So it does a lot of things which ordinarily most users don't often get around to doing. So it's worth running this at least once, preferably when OneCare is first installed. That way you can ensure that your system is humming along nicely. Now this tune-up will take a while to run through. It's got a lot of things it needs to get through, so I'm going to pause the video here and we'll return once this is complete. Okay, our system tune-up has run, and you can see here at the top our lovely green everything is okay has now changed to yellow, and also down here in our system tray we can see the icon has also changed to yellow. So at a glance we know there is something that requires our attention. Now in this case there's probably new updates that need to be downloaded in order for our system to be up to date, and to do that we'd simply need to visit Windows Update, and hopefully that should return our system back to normal. Okay, now we can view a report here, but if we just close this, down here we can also view our last tune-up report, and this is simply going to pop up a new window, and that's going to detail each stage of our system tune-up. Now firstly we're told under removing any unnecessary files isn't currently configured, and we can change it if we like by clicking on this link, but we won't do that right now since we'll see that later on in this video when we take a closer look at our settings. Now we can see that we did defrag our hard drive, and our scan for viruses and spyware was successful. We can see any backup recommendations. And finally, if we scroll down, we can see as it stands, our computer is missing some security updates from Microsoft. So it's a good idea to go ahead and patch our system to ensure it is running the latest security patches. All right, well, we'll close this. And up the top, we'll click the button here to go to Microsoft Update, and we'll update our system. Now in my case, I've found 7 important updates that we'll need to apply, so I'm going to go ahead and install these updates. And since updating a system can take a while, I'm going to pause the video here and we'll return once our system is updated. Okay, as you can see, Windows Update has succeeded in installing 7 updates to this computer, so we'll have to restart our PC. So I'm going to pause the video here, I'm going to reboot Vista, and we'll see you once Vista's back up. Okay, so we're back. Vista has been rebooted, so we'll go and click on Start, we'll select All Programs, and then we'll launch Windows Live OneCare. Now the next item we have here in our OneCare list is Start Backup, so we'll click on Start Backup, and then we'll click Continue in our user account control message, and this will fire up the backup wizard. So we'll click Next, and now we'll need to define a location where we want our backup to be stored, and this could be an external hard drive, a flash drive, an optical drive, a network share, and so on. Now, since I actually don't have a CD or DVD burner attached to this computer, and I know up here it does say CD DVD writer, but mine's only just a regular DVD drive, I'm going to choose to add a network location, and I'll choose to save my backup to a share on another PC. So I'm going to enter in a path to a location I have on a server called CEO/backup, and we'll click OK. And I'll need to enter in a username and password of an account that does have permissions to access this share, so I'm just going to use the administrator account, and I'm going to enter in a password here and click OK. Alright, so there's our path, so we'll click Next. And then OneCare is going to quickly scan our computer for any files and folders that haven't yet been backed up. Okay, we can see all of the file types that OneCare is going to include in our backup. And down in the bottom right here, we can see that this backup will take approximately 80 megabytes of space. Now personally, even though the majority of your data is going to be picked up and included with your backup automatically, one thing that I really despise about the new backup program in Windows Vista is that I can no longer go and manually check the files or folders that I want to back up. Now thankfully in OneCare, we can choose to include or exclude, if you like, other files. So if we click on Include Other Files, we can now click on the Add Files or Add Folders button and back up whatever we like. And quite frankly, this should have been included in the standard Windows Vista backup. For the life of me, I can't understand why it's not there, but thankfully it's here at least. So I could click on, say, Add Folder, and I could choose to say back up my entire C drive if I like, or just select an individual folder. Alright, now at the top here, in this drop-down box, you can see that our backup will automatically run when our system tune-up runs, but we can change that to have it run daily, weekly, fortnightly, monthly, or to not run automatically and just remind us when our tune-up runs that we should run a backup as well. Alright, well I'm going to leave the default here and click Next, and we'll get a summary about what we're about to back up, and if everything looks fine, we can click on Start Backup, and the backup will begin. Now as you'd expect, this will take a while, so I'm going to pause the video here and we'll return once our backup is complete. Okay, well our backup is complete. We get a brief summary here telling us how many files were backed up to the location we've specified, and if we click on this View Details link, it'll then give you a list of all the files that it backed up. Okay, now that our backup was successful, we can click on this View Last Backup Report, and that's just going to take us back to the same screen that we looked at a moment ago, where we can view the files in our backup. Now we can also choose to restore our backup as well, so if we select this and then click on Continue, we can choose to perform either an express restore, which is going to restore any files that are missing on our system since we last backed up. And this is useful if you've lost everything, for example, with a hard disk crash or something, but the most likely option you'll choose in most other cases is the custom restore. So we'll select that, and we can choose to restore our files from the most recent backup, or we could choose the second option and manually choose where our backup is stored, such as on a CD or network share. And this option's useful if the backup that you want to restore the files from is an older backup, or you're restoring a backup that was created on another computer. Okay, well since I have a recent backup, let's choose the first option, and we can choose to restore all missing files, which is fine if we've deleted a bunch of files. But often you've deleted things on purpose and you probably don't want them back. So whilst this option here is useful, it's probably not going to be the most widely used choice. So we could restore all files by a specific type, such as documents and music and so on. Or we can search for files that we want to restore. So we'll choose this option. And if you know the name of the file that you want to restore, you can simply enter it in here. But if you don't know the name, but you do know what type of file it is, you can use wildcards. So let's say it was a JPEG image that I've lost. I could simply type in an asterisk, followed by the extension .jpg, and then click Next, and there's a list of all the JPEGs in my backup. So we could choose to restore all of these files, or we could select one or as many files as we like by placing a check in the box next to the file that you want to restore, and if you hold down Shift on your keyboard and then select a bunch of files, it'll automatically select all of the files. Alright, so I'm going to choose to restore all these files here, and we'll click Next. Now when we restore our files, if there are any files in the location where the files originally were and have the same file name, we can either restore them to another folder with today's date, or we could simply choose not to restore these files. In fact, since none of my files actually have been deleted, if I just click Next here, you can see that nothing is going to be restored on my system. So let's click the Back button, and we'll choose the top option, and we'll restore these files to another folder on my computer. Okay, so we'll click Next, and this time we can see that we're restoring 8 files worth 2.4 meg. So to proceed with the restore, we'll simply click on Restore Files. Now since it's only a couple of files I want to restore, this should be pretty quick. And it's done, so we can view the details like we did with our backup, and if we click this hyperlink here, it shows us all of the files that were restored, and if we click the second hyperlink we have here, this is going to open up Windows Explorer inside the folder where our restore was saved. Okay, well the next thing I want to talk about is the Windows Firewall. You see, like with Windows Defender, our standard firewall that ships with Windows Vista is no longer being used. So if we go and click on Start and open up the control panel, we'll choose Security, and then we'll choose Windows Firewall. You can see here a big red problem telling us that our firewall is not running. But if we minimize this window here and we'll go back to our OneCare window, this here tells us quite the opposite, that our firewall is set to auto, which should be on. Now the truth is, like with Windows Defender, our standard firewall has been turned off and the OneCare firewall has replaced it. So we are protected, but this dialog here in our control panel isn't fully aware of it. Okay, so if we come down here and launch the Security Center, at the top here we can see that our computer is indeed protected by a firewall. And if we click this down arrow here, OneCare is in fact reporting that the firewall is on. So hopefully Microsoft will address this via a future Windows Update patch. I mean, look, it's technically correct. The Windows Firewall isn't on, and the Security Center does indeed show that we do have a firewall running. So it's a little bit confusing for some people. But like I said, hopefully via a future patch, Microsoft will address that so that the fact that you are running a firewall is actually reflected here. Alright, so how do we control our firewall then? Well, that's back in the settings section of the OneCare console. So let's go back to our OneCare console and we'll take a look. Okay, over here on the left-hand side of our OneCare console, we can also start a backup or restore our files, and we can change the OneCare settings. So we'll click on Settings, and then we'll click Continue. Alright, well, here we have 5 tabs. And I know that we were starting to talk about the firewall, but let's quickly just run through these tabs in order. Alright, well, the default tab here is the Tune-Up tab, and by default, our computer will run a tune-up every 4 weeks on a Thursday at 1 AM. And you can certainly change that if you like. Now down the bottom here, we can choose to remove any unnecessary files as well when our tune-up runs, and this will basically remove any temporary files and old ActiveX and Java installation programs to free up some space. But if you want to take a look at what's going to be removed, you can click this link here. Alright, then we'll select the second link from the top here, remove unnecessary files from your computer. And here you can see what's going to be removed if you decide to activate this feature. So basically it's going to remove any old ActiveX controls and Java applets and a whole bunch of different temporary files. Okay, well our next tab here is the Backup tab. And here we can see that our backup feature is turned on, and it will automatically check to see if there's any new files that need to be backed up, and if so, it's going to automatically include them in the next backup schedule. But we can turn off automatic backups if you like. Now the backup schedule will run automatically when our system tune-up runs. You can change this so it runs on its own schedule, either daily, weekly, fortnightly, or not at all, but just to remind you when the tune-up runs. Now we could also start a new backup right now if we like, by clicking on the Start Backup button, and that works in exactly the same way as starting it from the main OneCare screen. And finally, we can change the credentials of the network backup that we're currently performing. Okay, well on the next tab we have the Viruses and Spyware tab. We can see that scanning for these nasties is turned on by default, and I can't imagine why you'd want to turn this off. The virus scanner is also configured to look for virus-like behavior, which uses heuristics to analyze files to see if they have the potential to be viruses. And it's a good idea to leave this on since it can help flag potential problems for files that may be viruses, but there's not yet a definition available to deal with it. Now the virus and spyware scan is set to run automatically at 11 PM each day, and you can change it if you like. And down the bottom here we're told that OneCare will automatically take action against virus and spyware threats that are classified as severe or high, but with this checkbox enabled, it'll also take corrective action against those threats classified as moderate as well. So if OneCare does find a virus or spyware, it's going to quarantine the file, and if we click on the quarantine button, you'll find a list of those files in here. Now from here, if you have any quarantine files, you can select the file from the list and then choose to delete it forever, or if you're sure that the file is okay and it's been put in here by mistake, you can choose to restore it. Now if you do happen to have a file that gets flagged by OneCare as nasty and you know that it isn't, you can click on the exclusions button and then add in the file or folder, and OneCare will no longer scan that file. Alright, well our next tab here is the Firewall tab, and this is where you'll perform all of the configuration of the OneCare firewall, not through the control panel or the security center. You'll do it all right from here. Now at the top here, this slider bar shows us the level of protection for our firewall, and it is set to be automatic. Now what this setting does is apply what it determines to be the best level of security automatically. So if you're at home on your own network, it will allow more flexibility in accessing file shares and printers than it would if you were to take your computer and to connect it to a public network, in which case it'll automatically turn these features off. And for non-technical home users, this is a pretty good idea. Now we can of course change this. If we slide this slider bar all the way to the bottom, we'll be turning the firewall off, which isn't a fantastic idea. But if we slide it up to the next setting, we can have the firewall ask us for permission to let a program go through the firewall the first time we fire it up. And if you've used other firewalls like Zone Alarm, you'll recognize this feature. Now if we slide this bar all the way to the top, we'll have the most security but the least flexibility. And it's recommended when connecting through insecure networks. Now all in all, you'll probably find that the standard automatic setting is sufficient for most people, so we'll leave it set at the default, which is automatic. Now to make configuring the firewall simple enough for the average user, we can click on the Firewall Connection Tool button, and in here you'll find a bunch of common connections that a lot of people will want to use, and to activate them is as simple as checking the box and then clicking OK. And this here has configurations for things like network discovery, file and printer sharing. We could connect our Xbox, obviously VPNs, and so on. Now here under the Other Settings heading, we can see that the firewall will automatically change the protection level it offers when we connect to an insecure network, and it will give us one of those balloon-style pop-up notifications when it blocks or allows programs through the firewall. And for the more advanced users, if we click on the Advanced Settings button, we're able to then add in our own firewall rules. So on the Programs tab here, we can add or remove programs from our list, which allows us to block or allow specific programs from getting through to our firewall. On the Ports and Protocols tab, we can add specific protocols and ports through our firewall, and something new, we can add a port range. And that was one of the problems with the old XP firewall. It wouldn't allow you to create a port range. So if you had a game and World of Warcraft is a good current example, it wants a bunch of ports to be opened in order to download the latest updates to the game. Now that's fine, but you had to create an entry for each port you wanted to open. In this firewall, we can do it once, which is much easier. So to add a protocol or a port, we'll click the Add button, and we'll need to give this rule a name. So I'll just call my one WoW for World of Warcraft. Then we'll need to choose either TCP or UDP or both. And then we'll need to add in a port or a range of ports that we want to allow. Now in the case of Warcraft, if my memory serves me correctly, I think it's 6113 all the way through to 6119. And we can also specify whether this connection is going to be inbound, outbound, or both. And finally, we can choose whether this connection is going to be restricted to our local subnet only or allowed to connect to any other computer on the internet. Alright, now if we go and scroll down here, there you can see our new addition, which of course we can remove and edit if we like. Alright, our final tab here is the Managing and Sharing tab. And here we can choose to turn off our firewall, which, as it says, isn't recommended, and I certainly wouldn't recommend that you do, unless of course you are running a third-party firewall like ZoneAlarm. Okay, now under the Sharing heading here, we can choose to turn on file and printer sharing with all computers, including those on the internet, which is very risky, and I can't imagine why you'd want to do that. We can turn on sharing for only computers on our local network, or we could leave the default here, which is to not share any files and printers. Now down the bottom here, we've got the same settings, but for remote desktop. We can allow computers on our local subnet to initiate a remote desktop connection to our computer, anyone from the internet, or to turn it off. So what can we make of OneCare? Well, for a start, the antivirus and anti-spyware, they're great. The backup tool is definitely better than the inbuilt Vista one, if only for the fact that you can back up files individually now, and the tune-up tool, that just automates tasks that you could quite honestly do yourself anyway. For a power user, personally I'm not a fan of the firewall since it takes away a little of the control that I'm used to, but it is designed to be simple for most consumers to use, and that it definitely does. Also, the firewall now allows you to add in a port range, which was something that was sorely missing from Windows XP, and is often used for file sharing programs and many games, so that's a nice addition. The firewall does lack some of the advanced IPsec security connection rule features that you'll find in the inbuilt Vista Advanced Firewall, but since this product is really aimed at the home user, not the corporate user, this is hardly a major issue. At $50 a year for 3 computers, this is definitely great value. There's no question about that. Most antivirus vendors will charge you close to this price for a single license, and here you're getting 3 licenses and all of the other stuff basically thrown in for free. And with a 3-month trial period, you really have nothing to lose, so go ahead, download it, and give it a shot.